Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cash Flow Debates. My name is Eddie Hood, and this week we are talking about the cost structures and how they've changed in your business from the time of the pandemic, where maybe you had an office in-house and now you're working virtually. So many businesses are working from home now, and it has really changed how you're making financial decisions. And it has actually made things a little more expensive in some areas. It's made sort of decisions take longer. It's made training staff longer and harder, managing people harder. So this week I wanted to talk with Dan Luthi and Ryan Steck, my partners here at Ignite Spot, about what's changing and how businesses are managing these costs so they can not only stay afloat but do well. Because we're seeing a lot of businesses really struggle right now. They're going out of business, they're shutting their doors, and so on. And so I just wanted to open up the floor to that and have a discussion. So how you guys doing?
Doing really good.
Doing
Good,
well.
good. Just for people behind the scenes, we already did this. I screwed up before I hit record. And anyway, we're redoing the introduction. So, but Dan, you just went on vacation?
Yep. Went on vacation, spent some time in Disneyland with spring break with my kids, which was great.
Cool. All right. And you went to Disneyland too, Ryan?
I went to Disneyland as well.
Okay. All right. And you both enjoy Disneyland?
I enjoy Disneyland. Yeah. My kids love it. So it was good times.
Good.
I got really young kids still though. So it's definitely a different experience.
Good. Yeah. Excellent. Ryan, it used to be your favorite place on earth,
Yeah, we used to really like it.
but you still go even though you don't like it?
I think we've finally hit our end.
That's what you said last time. Now you've gone again. All right. Well, I think this is an interesting conversation because the way that working from home affects your decisions is really causing businesses to lose a lot of money right now. When we were approaching the pandemic, we had an office space and I loved it. I loved working in-house with the team. I loved being able to show up for like an early morning meeting and get everybody around the table and have conversations. And it felt like even though our staff wasn't as strong as they are now, there was a different dynamic, right? We've got a really good staff now, but the one thing that is really hard to replace is getting everybody around a table, right? In terms of culture, but also costs. So, but now we've been working from home virtually for a couple of years, and we've gotten quite good at it. But it has taken a lot of learning, and we still don't have everything figured out because
Yeah.
it's challenging. But what do you think, Dan?
I was just gonna say there's some things that work really, really well when you're in person. I mean, there's a reason why people still go to conferences. Education is really convenient when you're in the same space. You can build off each other, you can interrupt each other, and it doesn't feel like everybody can't hear the other person. Like Zoom hasn't figured out how to actually carry a full conversation with multiple people talking.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the biggest things that's very different, but also change management is a really big thing. I mean, every organization changes all the time. There's always something new going on. And when you're trying to, roll out a new platform or a system or a process, when you're in person, you can talk through it. You can work through those issues. You can work through those things. And when you work from home, it's a very, very different piece. You have meetings, people go back to doing what they're doing. They don't have Susan or Jim sitting next to them saying, hey, how do you do this? Hey, how do you do this? And so change management has probably become one of the most difficult parts of working from home and being virtual than what it was when we were in person.
Do you miss in person?
There's parts of in person I miss for sure. Yeah, I really, and it wasn't just like Bagel Monday that I missed. Like that was great, but
That was awesome.
no, I love people. Like I love being around people. It's a big thing for me. I mean, it's part of the reason why I participate in a lot of advisory boards and councils and things like that. Is ideas fuel me, and so that's definitely a drawback from what we have right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Ryan?
You know, it's interesting because there's pros and cons to both. And so what I don't miss about being in person is all the distractions.
Yeah.
It is so easy if you're not a hyper-focused person when you're in office to have lots of things come up to distract you. Now, there's some cons that we'll talk about in a little bit, I'm sure, on what that means from working from home for certain individuals as well. But I don't miss the distractions. I'm self-starter. I'm a motivated person. I love the ability to sit down, craft my day so that I'm maximizing my production.
I hope this comes out right. And Ryan is a self-starter. Ryan is a workhorse. Not everybody is that way, right? Not everybody is wired to just wake up and start crushing the workload and answering emails and stuff. And I think a lot of people really benefited from having that in-house sort of expectation of, I got to get to work now, right? Whereas when you're at home, if you're not that sort of go-to self-starter, I think one of the biggest worries that employers have is like, am I really getting 40 hours with you, or am I getting 25 and you're just telling me I'm getting 40? You know,
Yeah.
and let's maybe start there this week. I think that's a real cost businesses are facing now is wage bloat.
Yeah.
Right? You're taking on a $60,000, $100,000, $150,000 a year employee, and they're telling you that they're very busy, and in all likelihood they are probably quite busy, but it's possible that they're busy on the wrong things because their manager isn't guiding them. They're tackling what they think is best, which isn't always aligning with the company values and so on. Work's being done, right?
For sure.
But it's not always the 40 hours a week. Does it need to be 40 hours a week now?
I think we're seeing a massive shift in output requirements instead of time commitments. And I think this is one of the parts for clients that at least that we've worked with that I've seen that are really successful in managing a virtual organization is they're very clear with their teams. This is what we expect from each of you. This is the timelines and due dates on when things have to happen. And they've created accountability in their organization for those. For people who are transitioning into a work from home, that's oftentimes something you're not used to because you're used to having that conversation in person.
Yeah.
You probably don't have a project management tool that's as detailed as all the context and information you need. You probably don't have a wiki that's helping you to be able to answer questions that people are used to just turning cubicles and talking about. And so, those things are some of the most critical to be able to create that efficiency for people. And again, it's also understanding your realization. How much do you expect out of each of these people from their workload? I mean, you want them to have some elbow room to be able to understand when projects come up or things change or happen. But knowing that is super critical too, and part of this change.
It feels like even the best virtual tools, wikis, and everything else sometimes feels like we're playing the telephone game, though, doesn't it? A little bit.
1,000%. Yeah.
Like management crafted the initial message. Here's what you're supposed to do. I put it in. I did a video. I did a wiki. I did a thing, and like 20% of the company watched the video, right? 4 people even know the wiki exists, sort of stuff, right? And so then you get these people who are like, I've never heard of this before, trained on this, and you're like, I have been talking about this for 6 months.
Yeah, the running joke at Ignite Spot is if Dan says it, no one pays attention. But it's a lot of that context of, because I'm much more of a vocal, interactive person when it comes to training and teaching and coaching. Not everybody learns that way. Some people need that 13-page detailed out document. I get a 13-page detailed out document right now. I'm throwing it in ChatGPT, hopefully, and having it summarize it for me. But I think that's the big difference between also where we're at today is you have to learn how to deal with people's learning styles, which is very, very different than what we've dealt with before.
What do you think, Ryan?
It's a crazy world right now. It really is. And it's so funny because I listen to these conversations and you're all spot on. And the pandemic changed everything from a workforce standpoint. And I look at it and say the motivation of why people go to work today across the board is so different than pre-pandemic. What people want out of a job, it's different. And it's taken me a long time working with clients from a CFO standpoint, looking at our own organization to truly understand what do people actually want out of their work today. And that's probably the biggest thing we've got to understand with remote work, the change in the workforce and what that looks like is people's motivation has absolutely changed. So if you ask someone right now, do they want a promotion? Do they want a raise? Or do they want more time? The answer is yes. And what do they really want? It's taken me a long time to figure out what people want, but I'm seeing it across the board. And what people want is time. And that has shifted. That was not the case years ago. People are valuing time more than anything else in the workforce. And I think you have to understand that.
So what does that mean, though? Does that mean that they want more time during the 8-hour workday to work on projects that they're interested in? Or does that mean they want to kind of show up to work when they want to show up to work and kind of, because you mentioned outputs, Dan, versus actual time units, right? Yeah. Before it was like, you need to put 8 hours a day in. And if you do that, I know as the employer, I'm getting my ROI, theoretically. But that's now it's shifted to as long as you get X done, I don't care if it takes you 8 minutes, right?
Well, the answer to your question is yes. It's both, right? People
Mhm.
want flexibility in the time that they spend at work, and it's, they want to be able to control how much time they dig into things. They want to be able to be in control of when they start their day versus and also versus when they stop. Can I take a 2-hour break during the middle of the day to take my dog for a walk,
Mm.
and everything from that perspective. I mean, it's all of those things. Plus, also too, I mean, unlimited vacation is not something we offer. We have done it in the past, but that's another piece too. People are actually using their PTO more now than we've ever seen before. People value their own personal time. Like, it's really, really important to them to be able to make sure that they get that and they get the benefit of it. And I don't think they weren't doing it before because they were trying to hurt the company, but their goals changed.
Yeah.
Where it was, I'm here to take care of what my responsibility is, which is now I have responsibility outside of here, and I want to make sure I'm giving that what it needs to. And so people are using it as much as they can.
What does free time mean, Ryan?
So there's lots of articles, and we always point fingers at the youngest working generation. And as long as I've been doing this, everyone always points fingers at the generation below them, saying, oh, they're lazy, they're terrible. There's lots of articles out there right now talking about Gen Z entering the workforce. And what they're saying is that Gen Z has now shifted the game and saying that they want to work to live, not live to work, and that they're walking away from corporate opportunities because they value their life. And we peg Gen Z, but I don't think it's just Gen Z.
No.
I actually think it's across the board. It's not Gen Z, it's all generations now seem to be trying to shift towards working to live as opposed to living to work.
Mm.
And I think you have to understand that, because where people are losing right now is they keep trying to fix the problem by giving more money, giving promotions, and everyone's excited for 5 minutes. And then 5 minutes later, everyone's upset because what did they really want all along? They wanted time.
Mhm.
And that's my argument in saying, yeah, when I look at it and say people want raises, people want promotions, people want time, they want time.
So that puts employers in a little bit of a hard corner, right? Because this horrible thing called inflation has not gone away, and life is just getting more and more expensive. And so people who are wanting time, if they're getting it, then you go out and realize, I can't afford a cheeseburger. I can't go on vacation. It's just, I need more money. So then they go back to their boss and say, I need more money. And the employer is saying, well, I can't give you freedom of time and more money. So what do you do?
I think this is where, as an organization, you have to be much more like this has to be a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've either got to make a decision at your stance of what your policies are. Are you willing to give away more money to retain the employees, or is this an expectation conversation that they need to understand really what the true deliverable requirements are from them to receive that compensation change, and they get to decide. And I think that's one of the parts that's really hard too with this is, someone wants a $50,000 raise and you lay out a plan that says, okay, great, this is your output requirements to be able to get that. Giving them choice is saying, yes, I'm willing to do that or not, but being very clear that we're not going back after this conversation. This isn't
But by that you mean I'm not going to give you a $50,000 raise, and then if you fail, you don't get to keep making that money.
or to the standpoint that you may not get to go back to the position you were in before, because as an organization, you transitioned the organization to meet the changes that happened with that individual. And so you might have reallocated revenue to other people, you might have changed job org structures and things of that nature. And so I think that's the part that's becoming really difficult is people are now actually choosing if they want to retain their job after that period of time or not, because the organization has moved on after they made that decision. Once a decision's made, it's not like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore today. Like, let's go back to where it was. Like, you can't. I mean, most organizations can't do that kind of stuff.
As an employer, then you're faced with this relationship problem, right? You like the people that work for you, hopefully. Maybe some of them you don't care for as much, but hopefully. Um, and you want to retain staff because it's really expensive to replace staff, but the staff isn't always capable of doing more because they want free time, right? And you don't have the ability to monitor them and their workforce because they're working in Vancouver or wherever, and you're in Minnesota. So it seems like there's a real problem here with actually trying to build a profitable business. You mentioned that you need to know the rules of the game, sort of for you, right? So as a business owner, the very best thing you can do is just say, what are my financial values? And you kind of have to stick with those a little bit. You might be the kind of business that financially values, I'm just going to keep pumping money into my people because I believe happy people are hardworking people. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that, right? That works for some businesses. Um, your approach might be, I need to see outcomes before you get whatever.
Sure.
But there's just a lot of things. But what I wanted to point out is that's actually really hard to do, to define the outcomes in a business sometimes. This is for me because I gotta be honest, I don't always know what I'm doing. You know, we meet as partners and we think, oh, okay, what are our goals this year? What are we trying to accomplish? And sometimes we'll swing way right and say, let's go build that. Well, now everything's totally different. And so I think it's really challenging for a business owner to sit down and create a fleshed out plan for all of his or her staff to follow with outcomes and Gantt charts and due dates. And it worked really great in university in the textbooks. But in real life, stuff changes on a dime. The economy crashes. We have to shift. That 6 months of planning we just did doesn't apply anymore. So it's a bit of a chaos theory going on. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, everything's shifting and goals are shifting. And what we're talking about is really honing in on these employees and what they want when you have this remote situation. And that's no different than it's always been. Businesses have always shifted and gone right or gone left. And like, that's not changed at all. That's the order of business. What has shifted, and what I think is important to understand, is as we've talked about this motivation, what do you do with that information? And I was watching a video, and who knows how truthful it was this last week, but basically they pointed out when they were talking about small business and perception and employees, they basically said, look, an employee of an organization thinks you make 30% profit margin as a business owner. And in reality, businesses average about 6% in profit margin on a business. And I think part of it is people want what they want, which is time, but they don't want bad things for you as an employer. And so I think we're entering an age of transparency where we're actually getting to a point where we have to inform people, look, we're not all rich and we're not all at this amazing point, and not everyone's driving around in their 5 boats and their Porsche, and like, people are struggling as business owners too. And I think there has to be some connection there so that when the employee understands, who values time more than anything else, that they are impacting the business's ability to succeed, grow, and sustain itself. I think we can start hitting some middle grounds. But until that transparency happens, I think we're kind of in a tough spot right now.
Yeah. I like what you said earlier at breakfast today, Dan. You're mentioning that a business needs to know what it is in order to address this problem, because you can be a lifestyle business, right? You can be a high growth scaling business. You can be a business in reduction because maybe you're trying to retire and you're trying to offload and move out or whatever. There's lots of things to do. But I think at the heart of all of this, most business owners simply don't know what they are. And maybe you're trying to create a lifestyle business where you are like, I as a business owner just need some more time with my kids and my family, and I don't want to work 90 hours anymore because I've done that for 20 years, right? If that's what you're trying to accomplish. But then you go to your marketing department, you're like, okay, team, we're going to put $100,000 a month into Facebook ads, and we're going to bring on 80 new clients a week, and we're just going to scale. Like, that is completely the opposite of the lifestyle business, because onboarding and cost, everything else. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think that's one of the parts that this is one of the first questions actually that Ryan on the CFO team that they ask clients is, what is it that you want from your business? Like, what is it that you're trying to do? Build to sell, go through that process like you mentioned. And I think once you know that, it gives you so much more confidence in how you set up structure after, because you're at least working towards an end goal. It doesn't mean you can't change that vision in that direction later on. It doesn't mean you can't make an adjustment to the strategy in that way, but at least you now know, like, if we are trying to be a lifestyle business, that means that the system has to work across the board for everybody, because you don't want massive ripples and changes in impacts and ebbs and flows and what's going on.
You're not looking for high growth in a lifestyle business.
100%.
You're looking for stability.
Correct. So your cost structures are going to be evaluated differently. You're not looking for, well, in 3 years from now, we're going to have 700 people on this platform. And so let's build out a huge database on what needs to be done versus we're planning on only having 25 employees for the next 30 years. Like, do I really need to spend any more money than what we really are doing right now? Or are we overbuying at this point in time?
I don't know if you were aware that you did it, but I love how your voice like went down to we're only having 25 employees. Like psychologically, and this is definitely an American thing for sure, but like we feel like we have to be on the cover of Inc. magazine. Like,
oh, for sure.
We're not doing well unless we are scaling and growing and we're multi-million-dollar businesses. And it feels like a failure to just be a lifestyle business, to just settle and be happy and take care of our staff and put out a good product. For some reason, that feels like you just failed, but it's not. It's a really beautiful way to run a business if that's what you're looking for. You don't have to work 90 hours a week or a day or whatever and drive yourself nuts.
Well, and I think the interesting part about the ideas or ideals around a lifestyle business is it actually rolls from the top all the way down to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody understands or the leadership is determined that you're going to be a lifestyle business, your expectation for working potentially over 40 hours or stressing out your employees is going to change dramatically. Like you're going to listen to more of that cultural conversation because employee satisfaction is really critical to that retention aspect. Because you mentioned this earlier, it's really expensive to transition and change employees. It really is. And it's hard. And it's hard on the client. It's hard on the rest of the team. It's not just hard on the business owner. The business owner probably has the least amount of work because they most of the time they just have to find them.
Yeah.
But the rest of the team is the one that feels all of that transitionary pain and getting used to someone else. And it's just difficult from that perspective. So you have to recognize that space and understand that it impacts everybody, no matter what business structure you're looking for.
Well, and it costs a lot of money to bring on a client.
100%.
You have to train the client. You have to, for the first 6 months, I don't know, at Ignite Spot, for example, for the first 3 to 6 months, we're not making a dime on a new client.
Sure.
We're usually paying to be in that relationship because there's so much to learn and build and fix and do. So if you're like, we're going to get 90 clients a month, I don't want that insanity in my life. I just don't, right?
Yeah.
But anyway.
But it's understanding your business structure, right? At that point in time, to your point, if you're seeking to be a lifestyle business and your team cannot take on that volume, recognize it and be okay with it. There's nothing wrong with that to that point. If you want to be that 90 client per month system, you have to recognize there's structure. And that means there's pains that go with that. I mean, there's pains on both sides. Ryan kind of mentioned this before when we first started is you have to be willing to accept the circumstance that you're in when you make those decisions and accept the impacts that come from those decisions on whether it's putting more stress and strain on your team or the system or creating a more relaxed environment and what the offsets come with each of those.
What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, coming full circle, doesn't matter what style business you want. You still have to understand what motivates your people. And this is where I come back and say, whether it's a lifestyle business, whether it's a grind it out, whether it's we're going hard charging and growing 90 new clients a month, whatever it might be, you have to understand that people, for the most part, are valuing time more than anything else, which means no matter what, it's hard to give a promotion right now. Because now you give a promotion to someone, well, they want the promotion, they want the recognition, but they don't want to give up.
But they also want to go hiking.
Time.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to give up time and you've got a new promotion, anytime we've learned something new, you have to invest time in learning a new skill. And so, one, it makes it hard to promote people right now because they want time. It's hard to give a raise right now because their output expectations aren't changing because they want time. And in the rare case that we see it, and I think it's hopefully rare, you've got some employees who have figured out a system where they're working 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, and you're not even aware of it.
No, yeah, for sure.
And so all those things kind of come together and create this clash where I'm like, all you can do is solve for time. How do you now address raises? How do you address promotions from within? Because people want their time and aren't willing to sacrifice it for more money. and aren't willing to sacrifice it for a promotion.
Yeah, so I want to come back to that, but I had a quick thought too on this lifestyle versus scaling hard sort of thing. So my job here at Ignite Spot is ultimately to get new clients, and one of my favorite conversations whenever I'm on a sales call with somebody is to ask, "What are you trying to build? Are you building a lifestyle business, or are you building a high growth business?" And I've been doing this for how long? We've been in business now, 16, 17 years. I don't know.
Yeah, 16 years this year.
I have talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of businesses around the country and have asked that question. And I've had 3 people be able to answer me that they knew what they were trying to build. Every time people go, I don't know. I mean, I kind of want both. I don't know how to. And there's just no, we're building this, right? And you mentioned how it starts at the top and it comes down. And I think a lot of the problems with cost control and structure and growth and onboarding pains is that the business owners haven't made that firm decision and stamped it on the wall. We're building a lifestyle business.
Yeah.
We're building a skill business. Instead, they just come to work and they're like, we're building stuff, right? That's just not enough. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
And until you make that first decision, you're going to be wasting a lot of money everywhere else. So, Ryan, let's go back to your comment there where you're talking about time and how people are valuing it more than anything, and how it's putting sort of a cramp on your decision making as a business. You used the word transparency before, that we as business owners are going to need to have some clearer conversations with our staff of like, here's where we're really at. Are you proposing that we become open book companies, which if you're new to that term means I share my financial statements with the whole company every month?
Yeah, and I've had this conversation for years now with people, and everyone has a different philosophy on that. And I'm not trying to change people's philosophy because some people are more closed and they feel more comfortable being closed with that. And other people are much more open by nature.
Yeah.
And every organization has to speak to what they feel.
Yeah.
I'm saying that if you're an open book organization, be an open book organization and help employees understand and learn. If you are a closed book organization where you don't like to share that stuff, there are things you can do. And there are things you can show employee groups that will help them understand.
Like what? What can we share?
Yeah. And so if you don't want a company to know how profitable you are, you can sit there and say, well, in order to be a profitable company, we need to do this much in sales every month. And we set sales goals. That doesn't tell them how much money you spend, how much money you take as an owner, or what the bottom line is. You can make this revenue driven where you just say, look, look, employees, in order to remain in business, we have to do this every month. And then make it a company goal that is revenue based. You understand what your profits are, but we have to make something in place to say this is what we have to hit. And so it's number of sales per month, or we find some metric that doesn't disclose and show all of your financials, but we create metrics that allow you to say, if the company hits this and the company is aware of it, then we can all get behind this as a team. So even if you're closed book, you can find ways to show things to employees so that they understand that there's no money tree.
Yeah. That makes me think about how we're putting more weight back on the business owner, unfortunately, because you really need to make a couple decisions and know a couple key things about your business before you can have those conversations. Because we've learned over the past years where I'm the guilty culprit here, where I'll say, we need to do X to be successful. And I didn't put enough appropriate thinking into that. And so this team goes, great, let's go do that. And then we end up barking up the wrong tree on something, and we're not really generating the appropriate profit or time, right? So you really need to sit down and say, preferably with your accountant, what are the drivers of my business? Why are they important? And how can I turn that into a measurable goal for my staff? Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, to Ryan's comment about how transparent you are, I think there is a space of conversation, even if you're not a very transparent organization, where you can talk dollars and cents with your employees. And what I mean by that is a good example of this for us is we are not a massively transparent organization ourselves. Like we talk about seeing certain KPIs or directions or things that we're working towards, and that's totally fine. That's how we've chosen to run the business. But in situations, we also focus very heavily on efficiency. Efficiency is one of the number one things we focus on as an outsourced service provider. And so, a couple of months ago, we had one of our software partners share a new platform or tool with our team. And our team got really, really, really excited about it, which is cool. Super happy to hear it. They're like, this is going to save us 2-3 hours a month. This is super awesome. Then the software partner told me how much it cost.
How much
And,
was it?
and so I went back to the team and I said, how much time do you spend doing this every single month? And they said, well, about 2 to 3 hours. And I said, you know how much you make.
Mhm.
You know how much your hourly rate is. This software costs $250 a file.
Mhm.
Files, we work in QuickBooks files, so that's what we kind of account for it. And so you're talking about 5 or 6 QuickBooks files you're integrating data with. This is a $10,000 or $1,000 per month software for you to save 2 hours. Does that make sense? And it was really interesting to watch, and whether the team's listening or not, it was really interesting to watch them go through that process of understanding. Me, I knew instantly, yeah, this is a no. We're not doing this. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? Human capital time is a lot cheaper at that point in time, which isn't always the case. But in this situation, they got to be a part of that discussion of, oh, wow, like, as efficient as this really is, it's not benefiting the organization because now it impacts me. That means I'm going to have to add potentially more revenue in other places to cover the cost of that new platform and everything else like that. And those are areas where you can be transparent in some conversation is like, does it really make sense? And we didn't
Yeah.
have to do a full spreadsheet on the whole conversation, which was great.
I'd like to take just a second, if we can, and talk about some strategies that listeners can sort of apply in their business when it comes to addressing raises and costs and those kinds of things, because it's a conversation you have to deal with at least once a year with people. So I'm curious to know, how do you financially prepare for that, and also how do you tell people, sorry, there's no raise this year because you have lots of free time, or whatever it is, or your scope hasn't changed. um, and to start off the conversation at Ignite Spot, we made a change a couple of years ago, which I think has been really helpful for us, where we do all of the raises at one time, right? We do them all in June. Everybody gets reviewed at the same time, and all of the raises are applied at the same time. Has that been a good change for us, a bad change for us?
It's been really good because it's allowed us to create a system and a process around it. Anytime you evaluate your team, it's a huge time commitment from them and from you.
Yeah,
And so knowing when it's going to happen, we picked a time when it was the slowest for our company. Um, slowest is
in
relative,
terms of production,
yeah.
yeah.
And it's relative to kind of just circumstance, but usually people are going on vacation, our clients are, and things like that. So we slow down a little bit. Um, so for us, it made a lot of sense to centralize it. Plus, also, it makes it a lot easier to communicate to new hires. We do this once a year, and this is when you expect to have that conversation. And so it helps people to feel more confident that they know what they're looking for. They know what to be expected when they come to that period. I think it's been really good for us.
What do you think, Ryan?
I agree that I like having those raises at that point in time. Where my mind keeps going to though is I keep coming back to what you said. How do you have that conversation with someone when, oh, there's no raise available because they've chosen time? And I think we're actually starting to enter that area in the workforce where that actually has to start becoming a conversation, where you can only expect so much out of an employee.
Yeah.
And where I think that's going to have to shift, and this is from my experience with one on ones with some of our employees, but also employees for other organizations that I've worked with, where I've had a small sampling of one on ones, if you will. But I'm seeing consistency. And with that consistency, what I'm seeing is that we actually have to have honest conversations with people now. We actually have to sit down and ask the questions. What do you value? Do you value time? Do you value promotions? Do you value all of these? And when they say yes, you have to have deeper discussions about what they want, because the employee, if they're going to be happy, have to come to their own understanding of what they value most. They have to internalize within themselves that I am choosing time and flexibility. Because the minute you just preach to them that they're picking time over a raise or over a promotion, it doesn't resonate with them. You have to have one on ones with your employees now and truly help them understand, not preach to them until they say, okay, I get it. Help them understand that they're making a choice, that they want time.
Yeah, and there has to be some sort of measure of productivity there too, because any employee who's remotely smart in that conversation will be like, "Well, I want the raise. I'm working my butt off." When in reality, they might not be. They might be at home washing dishes, going for walks with the dog, putting an hour or two a day in, right? And being like, I'm working 9 hours a day, I'm getting killed. There's no way to measure that. And I'm not trying to be cynical
Right.
about it, but it's very possible. And a lot of people do take advantage of that. And so as an employer, if you're going to be having these conversations, you're going to ask, would you value more time or money? If they say, I want more money, you need to go back to Dan's conversation of, okay, well, output matters, right? You are creating 5 widgets a day. You need to create 7 widgets a day at this quality level. It can't just be, great, keep working hard and get some projects done this year. And here's an extra 20 grand and we love you. There needs to be a real measured physical driver. Otherwise,
Yeah.
as the employer, you will get taken advantage of.
And when you have that output conversation, what happens? The employee says, okay,
Ooh, I don't
I
know
will
about that.
choose to
Yeah.
do that and take the raise.
Yeah.
Or they will bristle, at which point you're on the journey of helping them understand that they're picking time over
Yeah.
production.
Well, and I think the part that's critical with all this too is both options are fair options.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure.
And I think this is
The
the part,
business needs both.
Yeah, well, and I think the part that's critical for an organization, for a leadership team to understand is it is okay to have employees who just want to do work. They want to work and then they want to go home. There's
Steady
nothing
life.
wrong with that, right? And there's other people who want to kick butt in the 40 hours they have, and you might get higher output from those people. And then there's also people who are going to want to work 60 hours a week because that's just the engine and the process and the way they work. You as an employer have to understand the entire different client mix and where they're important in your organization and where you can accept those type of people. Because if you can't, and you treat everybody blanketly in the same rule, you're going to have dysfunction in your organization. You're going to have people unhappy in the way that they work. You're going to have people frustrated by the situations and the lifestyle that they're in because the company is not paying attention to where they are at. Much to Ryan said about the generational conversation, like, I actually agree with Ryan 100%. I don't think this is a Gen Z issue or anything from that. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with other business owners or other firm owners that every person in their organization actually wants time.
Yeah. People are feeling crazy right now.
People who have been there for 100 years, people who have been there for 100 minutes. Like, everybody values time, and it's a good thing. I mean, personal time is important. We need to be able to be willing to do that outside the business, but we also have to understand the implications of it.
Yeah, I think before the pandemic, people weren't aware of how mentally constrained they were, just
100%.
working 100 hours a week, just banging, banging, banging. And then once you were forced to be home, you were like, oh my gosh, I'm a human being. So I think it's completely reasonable to expect that, but the business has to learn how to work with it, right? And you need to have that transparent conversation. And I think the employees need to be honest enough with their employers to say, one, I recognize I got a good thing going here. My employer is offering me some work-life balance. That is a form of raise, by the way. If you're an employee and you're listening to this and your employer isn't micromanaging you and making you log in at 8 and log out at 5 and prove every 15 minutes of your time, that is a form of a raise. It is, because he or she is trusting you and just saying, do your work well, right? I think a lot of us are enjoying the fact of feeling a little more balanced mentally, and that's okay. Let's just work with it, right? So, well, I think we're getting close to wrapping up here. I'm just curious if you guys have any last thoughts before we send people on their way for the week.
If you're going to be successful with employees that are out there right now, you've got to be an excellent communicator as an employer.
Which means you need to know what you want to say before the meeting happens. Put a little thought into, like, what am I trying to accomplish before? Don't just wing it.
And I love that comment. And I also think it too is communication doesn't mean strictly talking about outputs.
No.
Throughput is not the only conversation you should be discussing. Like, you actually need to understand what makes them tick.
Yeah.
And by knowing that, it really helps you to be able to make sure you're coaching them in the right direction, because that's part of your job as a leader, is to coach.
Yeah, I like it. Well, just to summarize really quickly what we've talked about today, there is a lot of weight on you as a business owner to figure a couple of things out. First and foremost, we need to take time to decide what kind of business you want to run, whether it is a lifestyle business or a high growth business. Perhaps you are working to sell your business and you're scaling down. Please take a moment to figure that out. But once you know that, I think it's critical that you make some decisions around how and when you're going to be giving staff raises. At Ignite Spot, we prefer doing it once a year. One, because it sort of brings all of the conversations together and makes it easier on staff. But two, from a financial planning perspective, we know that every June we're going to have a change in our cost structure, and we've got 11 months to plan for that and do so appropriately. There are no surprises with that model. But three, having conversations with your staff around the value of freedom versus the value of a raise. And everybody in the room needs to know that time is a form of payment. It is a part of your wage to have that sort of freedom of life to go about as you please. So take all that into consideration, knowing that by working virtually, we are increasing these invisible costs everywhere. We don't have the ability to watch each other work. We don't have the ability to control projects. It costs more time to onboard people. All that needs to be taken into consideration. So if you are stressing out about those things, spend a little more time with your accountant and ask those critical questions. Hey, we hope you got something out of it this week. Our goal here is to help any entrepreneur who is financially frustrated. By that, we mean that you've been working really hard for many, many years and don't feel like the financial payoff has been worth it yet. And I'm going to put yet in there as a qualifier because your business can work well and it will work well once you start making some of these decisions. Until next week, stay profitable and we'll see you on the Cash Flow Debates.